Hi everyone, let's talk about the Phrygian mode. This is the third mode of the major scale, and what that means is if you take a major scale but start and finish on the third note and really treat that note like it's your home note, your tonic, you get a different sound, a different mode. And that third mode is called Phrygian. Let's take an example. Let's say I play a C major scale. But let's start that same thing on the third note, the E. So I've got this. Notice how it sounds darker. It's got a kind of minor sound because it's got this minor third in it. It almost sounds like a Spanish minor. To understand why a scale has the sound that it does, you always need to really compare to what's called a parallel major scale. Everything compares to major scale. So for example, I just played the E Phrygian scale, the third mode of the C major scale. But if you compare it to the parallel major, E major, you get some differences. Here's the E major scale. That's E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, and back to E. But when I played E Phrygian, I didn't play that. I didn't have those sharps. I had E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. So when you compare to the major scale, you'll notice instead of an F sharp, we've got this flattened second or a minor second. Instead of G sharp, we've got G, so that's a minor third or a flattened third. The fourth was the same as in E major. The fifth was the same. Instead of having the C sharp, we had a C. So we have a flattened sixth. That's a very minor sound, a very dark sound. And then instead of having the D sharp, we had a D. So a flat seventh or a minor seventh. So when compared to a major scale, Phrygian has 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, and back to the 1 again. Because of the presence of the minor third, the flattened third and the flattened seventh, it works over minor 7 chords. So whenever you see a minor 7 chord, you can play Phrygian over that. In fact, there's 3 modes you can play: Dorian, Phrygian, and Aeolian. So how do you know which one to use? Well, let's say you've got a chord of, say, E minor 7. Okay, on its own, that chord doesn't have a lot of information. It's minor, so you need some kind of minor scale like Phrygian, or you could be playing natural minor, Aeolian, or Dorian. So you've got 3 modes you could play over a minor 7 chord. The chord itself is kind of ambiguous. If you have more information though, if you have more chords around it, you can start to figure out whether that chord wants to have Dorian, Phrygian or Aeolian played over it. And it really depends how it's functioning. If it's behaving as the second chord in the key of D, it would be the E Dorian mode you'd want. If that was your home chord, but it was acting like the third chord in the key of C, then you would play E Phrygian. And if it's behaving as the 6th chord in the key of G, you would play E natural minor or E Aeolian, as it's also called. So the way we figure out how a chord is behaving is when we look at the chords around it. If I've got a chord progression, for example, that goes E minor, C, D, E minor, and really resolves on that E minor, it's some kind of minor mode because it resolves on that minor chord. The C and the D and the E minor, you only see those 3 chords in the key of G. So I must be playing the 6th chord in the key of G. I must be playing the E Aeolian mode. However, if I had, say, these chords, G, A, D, and resolved on the E minor, those chords all belong to the key of D. So I'm resolving on the 2nd chord of the key of D. I'm playing the 2nd mode, Dorian. Today we're interested in the Phrygian mode, which would be when we're playing the 3rd mode of the key of C. So let's say I've got chords like C, F, G, and suddenly E minor. Those chords only belong to the key of C. So I'm playing a mode of the key of C, and because I'm resolving on the 3rd chord, the E minor, I am playing the 3rd mode. So basically the mode you play depends on the chord you're resolving on and whether it's behaving as a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or a 7 chord. There's a couple of clues to know when a chord is behaving as a 3 chord. So for example, if ever you see 2 minor chords next to each other like this, say E minor, D minor, the only place you see 2 minor chords next to each other in the key is a 2 and a 3 chord. And if it's that 3 chord, 2, 3, that you are resolving on, then you need the 3rd mode. Another clue is if ever you see a minor chord followed by a major chord 1 fret higher, that only happens in a key between the 3rd and the 4th chord. You only see a minor and a major that close together when it's a 3 and a 4 chord. And if you're resolving on the 3 chord, then you need the 3 mode, Phrygian. Let's look at or hear what this sounds like. So let me play something with chords from the key of C, but I'll resolve on the E minor chord. So I'll play something like E minor, F, G, back to E minor. So that's the 3 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord, and back to the 3 chord. Spanish minor sound to it. So I wouldn't pretend it's the most useful of all the modes. It's certainly more useful, I think, than Locrian. That's a very strange sounding mode, which we'll come to in another lesson. But it's not to be completely ignored. You need to know what Phrygian sounds like. It's minor sounding. It's got a Spanish minor sound, but it's quite dark sounding because it's got the minor third, the minor sixth, and the minor seventh. The flattened second, though, that's a really weird sound. That's that kind of Jaws sound. And that's what differentiates it from, say, natural minor, which has a more typical major second. And here's Phrygian. Just an extra point about Phrygian. If you were to extend your minor 7 chord to, say, a minor 9 chord, Phrygian won't work. And the reason is when you look at the notes in E Phrygian, you'll see that you've got a flattened second, also known as a flattened ninth. The two terms are interchangeable. So you can't play over E minor 9, you could play over E minor with a flattened ninth, and that would be fine. Anyway, I hope that short but sweet video was useful to you. If so, please click like and subscribe. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.